All right, next up we have Priest. Now, Priest got a lot of interesting stuff in the core set that gives it kind of a different direction with the overheal minion package, and this is an interesting one too. Power Chord Synchronize. So 2-cost spell. Choose a copy of a minion, or choose it rather. Choose a minion. Add a copy of it to your hand. Finale. Give both +1/+2. So this is Seance. Seance was a 2-cost spell that just copied a minion in your hand, and now this is Seance with a bonus. Give both +1/+2. So this is interesting because you can use this on choose a minion. This can go on an opposing minion. So if your opponent has, say, like an Astalor that you want, you can boop. I'll steal an Astalor, put that in my hand. It can also obviously be playing your own minion, and you'll probably want to use Finale then and not in your opponent's minion. But yeah, no, this is, I think, just a solid card. You can play like a turn 1 minion, boom, turn 2, I'll get another one of those, buff it, and yeah, keep it going. Obviously, I think this is most likely going to see play in one of two situations. One is in a tempo style deck, which is going to take advantage of the buff portion of it and using it as like a relatively inexpensive buff that also gives you more resources, or as like a combo style tool to get additional copies of a key minion like Astalor. Next up, we have Harmonic Pop. So this is probably the harmonic spell that has the biggest swings between the different versions. So this is a 6-cost spell that is deal 3 damage to all minions, summon a 6/6 pop star, or deal 6 damage to all minions, summon a 3/3 pop star. So this is, definitely something that's like, okay, well, in a certain matchup, you need it to be one or the other, right? Like if your opponent has big things, you really need the big damage. If they have small things, well, you don't need the small damage for the big thing, but you'd much rather have it be the harmonic side rather than the dissonant side. But yeah, I think this is just a solid card. I do have some concern about like just how important it is to have the 6 damage when you need the 6 damage. It sort of is contingent on what the metagame looks like. If the 3 damage is enough most of the time, then great, right? But if there's like a lot of big minions, then maybe this isn't really necessarily the card that you want as your sweeper. But overall, yeah, I mean, I think this is just a solid card. And I expect this to be a good option for controlling priest decks. Next up, we have Idol's Adoration. I like this card a lot. A 1-cost equipment weapon. Your hero power costs 0. After you use it, lose 1 durability. So this really stands out to me as obviously intended to be a tool for like the overheal style decks. Because this allows you to get the overheal trigger on your minions the turn you play them without having to, jump through any hoops. So you can play this in turn 1, play like a 2-cost overheal thing, like say Mana Geode. On turn 2, boop, immediately get your 2/2. Or like the legendary thing that does like, I think 5 to an opposing thing when you overheal it. Boop, get them. You could theoretically use this in Shadow Priest too, right? You could use it in Shadow Priest for just 0-cost 2 damage multiple times. Seems less useful unless you're getting a bonus effect from it. But this is effectively, assuming your hero power is valuable, it's effectively 1 mana for 4 mana spread out over turns, right? It's 1 mana on a card for 4 mana worth of impact across multiple turns. The only awkwardness is if you would have had the mana to use your hero power and you want to use your hero power, it's still going to cost 0 and still cost you durability. So that's like the downside. But I just think overall, this is just a very, very solid card that, is really powerful from a tempo perspective. And I expect it to see a decent chunk of play. Alongside this, Fan Club, a location. 1-cost, 2 durability location. Restore 3 health to all friendly characters. Speaking of that overheal deck, holy cow, is this insane in the overheal deck. If your deck is, has like multiple overheal minions and you play this, you're like, boop, trigger all of them. Heal myself for 3 too, by the way. This is also just like, set it and forget it, 1-cost location that just heals you for 6 over turns. This is a really powerful card. I think this card is very, very good. I don't think it's likely to be good if you're not playing a minion-based deck, because obviously just like, a couple instances of heal 3 on just yourself is not that good. But if you have minions that you are getting damaged and you want to heal, and you have overheal triggers and whatnot, very, very good. I think this card is extremely strong, and I think it's going to be a key element of any kind of minion based priest deck that isn't Shadow Priest. Next up we have Dreamboat, a 2-cost 1/2 Naga. Battlecry, restore 3 health to all other friendly minions. Gain +1/+1 for each one overhealed. So again, like very good in a deck that wants to have a lot of minions, right? Like you want to have a bunch of cheap minions that you're playing, hopefully with their overheal triggers. There's the Crimson Clergy is now basically 1/3 for 1 with, if this is overheal, draw. Between this and the location, the weapon, lots of things that can work very effectively. So this card, I think, is pretty strong. It is a Naga. There are, like you can use this in like Naga Priest, or like play like Serpent Wig with this in that style of deck, which is definitely the kind of deck that can use that buff very effectively. And you don't have like quite the same just make a gigantic guy. Is Bless still around? I think Bless is still around, right? Or does Bless rotate? I'm trying to think. Bless. Yeah, Bless is gone. Bless is from Alterac Valley. So Bless is going to be gone. So you don't have the like, hey, I make an individual giant guy and just nuke you in quite the same way as you did with Bless. So you have more of like an incremental big dudes and, kind of trying to gain that overheal tempo and value. You don't have the same like Radiant Elemental nonsense with Wig either. So it's more of like, hey, I'm just kind of trying to play this honestly. And this, alongside a bunch of other minions, maybe can use Serpent Wig in an honest fashion we have not seen since the dawn of time. Next up, we have Shadow Chord Distort. 3 costs, give a minion -5/-5. It has 0 attack, destroy it. So this is a very interesting one. Like, just 3 costs, give a minion -5/-5. Like, just -5 health is going to kill a lot of things. But if that doesn't kill it, if it has 0 attack, it also gets destroyed. This is just a very, very, like, efficient, effective, flexible removal spell. So I think this card seems pretty solid. I don't know that it necessarily is something that goes into like a lot of different decks. You still have, like ultra efficient removal in the form of like the Light It Burns for like control. But this is a like, hey, I can kill a big thing in shadow. If I'm playing like Shadow Priest, more of like a, mid-range style Shadow Priest, this is a potential option there as well. Next up, we have Heartthrob, a 3-cost 2/5 with overheal. Summon a random minion with cost equals the amount overhealed. Well, speaking of that overheal deck, this like you can do like incremental small bursts and get a bunch of small minions. If you have like ways to heal like a ton of damage or something, like, somehow if you hit like heal 8, boom, 8 drop. That is kind of powerful, right? Like that feels like it's very, very good. So yeah, I mean, and it's a 2/5 for 3. This, is very powerful. One thing that is really powerful with all the overheal things, cannibalize. Speaking of powerful spells in an overheal deck, you cannibalize a mid-sized opposing minion, trigger all of your overheals, because cannibalize heals you and all of your minions. So, like, if you have a Heartthrob in play and cannibalize your opponent's large minion, it's like, okay, suddenly you are the one with the really large minion. So definitely a very powerful synergy to look at there. Speaking of powerful, overheal minions, Heartbreaker Hedronus. Battlecry, it's a 4/8 for 4. Battlecry, deal 4 to it. Overheal, deal 5 to a random enemy. So, this is basically an injured Blade Master style card. You obviously really want to heal it the turn that you play it so that you don't just have a 4/4 that dies immediately. And if you overheal it, nuke them. So if you have multiple ways to like easily heal your minion in the same turn, it can just be nuke, 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 nuke. You get this guy down, you like heal it with your hero power, you activate your Idol Adoration, boom, 5 damage. You activate another Idol Adoration, boom, 5 damage. So, then, now you got a 4/8. Okay, well, next turn I cast my Cannibalize, boom, 5 more damage. You just keep getting them good. And next up, we have Love Everlasting. 3-cost Holy Spell, Legendary Spell. Your first spell each turn costs 2 less. Lasts until you don't play a spell on your turn. So this is a very interesting card. This is, a very powerful spell for like a control style deck that is very spell heavy. Um, like they like two less for your first spell every turn is really strong. And if you could potentially like discover more of these, it'd be like four or less, and you can just keep casting spells. Oh, it doesn't stack. People in the chat are saying it doesn't stack. I don't see why it wouldn't stack. It seems like it should stack. People in chat are saying it doesn't stack. We've been duped. I don't know why it wouldn't. With, for instance, like Svalna. This is very powerful with Svalna because you can always play your Discover a spell for one. You're always gonna have a spell because you always have the spell in your hand. In just a like a typical controlling style deck, you frequently will have just like you cast Identity Theft, you steal a spell, like it's just a really powerful card in a lot of different styles of decks. As long as you're like a pretty spell heavy deck and have ways to generate more spells with your spells, this can just really make your tempo over time end up being extremely strong with the spell generation and discounts that you get from it. And lastly, we have Fight Over Me. Choose two enemy minions, they fight. Add copies of any that die to your hand. So this is just a really strong card. If your opponent has like two small minions, it's like 4 mana, kill both your minions. Like add copies of any that die to your hand. It can be value generating, right? Like this can kill an opposing, we talked a lot about like this can kill opposing Astalor, get you an Astalor. Kill, opposing like value minions. Boop, they die. Obviously, like it's something that is a lot easier for your opponent to play around than like say Hysteria, which is like a minion keeps attacking things until it dies. But as long as your opponent has multiple things that are remotely the same size, it can be extremely powerful both as a removal effect and as a value card. So overall, I really like the priest tools that we have from this set. I am particularly excited about the overheal type stuff, the minion based priest stuff that gives you incentive to actually use your hero power to heal minions. One of the things that I have always been kind of frustrated about with like control priest style decks is they typically, most of the priest decks that have historically been successful are combo or control. And where the hero power of priest is better than the hero power of warrior, the only time that it's not worse is when you're targeting a minion. And you so rarely do that in so many priest decks because you're either just wiping the board repeatedly or you're just killing your opponent in a single turn kind of thing. So having things with overheal that are like, hey, I'm going to heal my minion, having an entire like archetype that is built around wanting to do that really makes me happy as both a player and a designer. And having a lot of tools that like allow you to play that kind of like, hey, I'm going to keep my team alive. And if you don't kill them, it's bad for you, rather than like you just didn't damage all my guys, so I guess my hero power does nothing. So overall, very excited for Priest in this expansion, a combination of the new cards and the revamp with Overheal in the core set. So lots of cool stuff that I am very excited about. All right, next up we have Rogue. Rogue starts off with Rhyme Spinner. It's a 3-cost 1/3 with Rush. Combo, get +1/+1 for each other combo card you've played this game. So this does have the potential to get like pretty large. Rogue has a lot of combo cards, a lot of cheap combo cards, even in the form of things like the Ghostly Strike and the I'm forgetting the name of the one that gets a card at the bottom of your deck, the Dredge one. But regardless, there's a lot of cheap ways to get this pumped up pretty quickly. That said, this is like fundamentally, like a board control card with Rush, but can be like a finisher, if you can just get it big enough. Between Ghostly Strike, Gone Fishing, which is that 1-cost card I was talking about, like Eviscerate is back in the core set as well. So that there actually are like a pretty decent chunk of just combo cards that you can use to facilitate this. So you do have the ability to go fairly large with this over the course of the game, and even just like playing like 2 combo cards in the early turns. Say you play like a Gone Fishing and a Ghostly Strike, right? Then you play this on like turn 3 or 4. Obviously, you want to combo this on turn 4, and you don't have to have comboed all the cards. Crucially, this says +1/+1 for each other combo card you've played. You can just play, say, a Gone Fishing or Ghostly Strike without combo, and it will buff this. So, say you play this on like turn 4, having played like 3 other combo cards, it's a 4/6 rush, right? That's pretty powerful for keeping you alive, and later in the game, it can be something that can actually end the game and kill your opponent. So, seems reasonable. Obviously, Rogue has historically had a lot of very powerful cards, so might not necessarily be good enough to hold up to everything else they can do. Next up, we have Record Scratcher. Death Rattle, refresh a mana crystal. Play combo cards while equipped to improve. Mana is a powerful thing. Rogue's very good at cheating mana. And combo cards obviously want you to spend, like a bunch of mana in a given turn. So this is obviously a pretty powerful another enabler and payoff for playing that sort of combo heavy deck. One of the key things, of course, is you need to have enough cheap things that are not themselves combo cards, or enough combo cards you're willing to play without combo, in order to actually get your combos off without them feeling like very, very unimpressive. So there are cheap things like this Breakdance. Obviously not necessarily something that you're going to be just playing by itself, but if you do have something on the board, Breakdance, return a friendly minion to your hand, summon a dancer with its stats and a rush. This is a powerful way to get additional battle cries off of things, additional opportunities to use your combo cards. Obviously requires you to have something in play already, but say you had your a big version of Rhyme Spinner already in play, and then you're like, all right, well, I can go ahead and Breakdance it back to my hand, and replay the spinner, and able to get the dancer, which maybe you trade with the spinner, right? And you have like a low health remaining on it. You get to Breakdance, return the spinner, attack with the damaged, effectively the damaged version with the dancer, and then replay it and get effectively a full heal off of it. So pretty similar to like a Shadow Step, obviously not as powerful in terms of the sort of mana reduction that you get. Harder to use over like with cheap minions in terms of the utility and whatnot. But another way to gain value from Battle Cry and combo effect again. Next up, Harmonic Hip Hop. 2-cost spell, deal 1, give your weapon +3, or then deal 3, give your weapon +1. So this is interesting. Like if you do have like a weapon with higher durability, this can be a very powerful way. +3 on a weapon is kind of a lot. And if you're looking to use it as removal, 3 damage for 2 is, as we've seen from Tooth and Nefarian, a pretty reasonable removal checkpoint, as long as you're also getting a little bit of additional value from it. Next up, we have MC Blingtron. Both players equip 1/2 microphones. Your opponent increases all damage they take by 1. So this is interesting in 2 ways. One, obviously, it's a very powerful way to do burst damage to your opponent, especially if you have multiple sources. If you have, say a bunch of small minions, MC Blingtron can, effectively be a Void Touch attendant for just your opponent, and you can rush them down and do a bunch of damage to them. It also is weapon removal. The fact that this equips a microphone for your opponent destroys whatever weapon they have equipped. And in a metagame where every single class potentially has weapons, the value of that is a lot higher. Being able to remove your opponent's, even with the Death Rattle weapons, right? Even with the Death Rattle weapons that like build up, before they can build it up, or say your opponent has one of these in play. Say your opponent has a Record Scratcher. Your opponent refreshing their mana crystals on your turn doesn't really do anything for them, right? Whereas, you can use the Blingtron, kill it so they don't get the additional mana available on their turn, and make them take additional damage. So I think that this like, it's important to recognize the sort of multiple angles that MC Blingtron attacks your opponent on, thanks to the prominence of weapons in this set compared to others. Next up, we have Mic Drop. 3-cost, draw 2 with Finale. Give your weapon +2 attack. So another card that buffs weapons. There's only the one new rogue weapon. Obviously, you can have your hero power, but without like a high durability weapon, it feels like, having these multiple things that are all weapon buffs are a little bit less appealing than they might otherwise be. But, obviously just hero powering on turn 2, playing this on turn 3, you draw 2, buff your weapon, kill something. can be pretty powerful to just allow you to set up and get some advantage while effectively not being as far behind as you otherwise might be because you did get the weapon buff from this. Next up, we have Mixtape. One cost, discover a copy of a card your opponent played this game. So sort of a Thief Rogue style card, but also just something that could be a reasonable card in a lot of just a lot of games. Like if you play this in the early turns, your opponent played a individual powerful thing early. You're like, okay, I want one of those. Like in the later turns, it's going to be a lot less controllable, but will still add something to say a Tess. There's still a lot of powerful tools for Thief Rogue that are not rotating. Like Contraband Stash is going away. It was in Alterac Valley, so that's probably the most important of them. That you'll no longer have just the sheer power of having access to multiple of those effects, but there is still Tess. Tess is still in the core set this expansion. And there still are other, cards that do key off of, cards from another class. There's like Ransack still. I believe Double Agent is gone now too. So definitely a lot less power in those decks, but this gives you a bit of additional optionality and utility. Next up, we have Beatboxer. It's another combo card, but a 3-cost 4/3 with combo. Deal 4 damage randomly split among all enemies. So you're playing an aggressive combo deck, and you can just play this and just 4 to your opponent's face. They have small minions, can also just like wipe those out as well. I am a little bit sad because Shadow Boxer, the card that this is a callback to, was a card that I loved in my Goblins versus Gnomes Mech Priest. It was dealt damage to your opponent's stuff randomly when your stuff was healed. So that was a fun one. But Beatboxer, alongside this with say MC Blingtron, right? It's 4 instances that are all increased by the damage microphone that Blingtron gives you. And just another card that can stack up in terms of being a reasonably efficient tool in those various combo-centric decks. Speaking of combo-centric decks, Disc Jockey combo, add a combo card. So if you're really looking to stack up the combo effects for your rhyme spinner back here, Disc Jockey does allow you to do this. It is only a 4/1 for 2 that and you need to combo to get it. So this is probably a tough card to justify playing, right? It is a very, very vulnerable minion that you don't even get the combo effect off if you just played it out. So this feels like a difficult one to justify including in your deck. Outside of like a deck that is so devoted to just getting as many combo cards as possible. And then lastly, the legendary spell for Rogue, Bounce Around, featuring Garona. Return all friendly minions to your hand. They cost 1 this turn. So importantly, this card cannot be generated by random effects, cannot be discovered. It is one of 2 of the legendary spells, the other one being the Death Knight one, that were deemed problematic if you could get multiple copies of them. Importantly, this could just basically chain forever off of getting it on a school teacher. So that's probably the main reason. But this is something that could be obviously very powerful with battlecry effects, with combo effects. We've seen all the things that Rogue is capable of doing with being able to replay a bunch of stuff. Crucially, there's no Bran anymore. Bran is no longer in the core set this rotation, so you can't truly abuse those sort of things, but you can still do nutty things with your Astalors and whatnot. You could Astalor prep, play this, and actually replay the Astalor 8 on turn 10, which is pretty scary, right? But there's like a lot fewer things that help enable it as well. There's no Scab's Hero, so you have a lot less of that sort of thing that you can actually do. But certainly likely to be seen alongside Astalor and similar things in Rogue decks in the near future. Overall, I think that Rogue doesn't, Rogue has a lot of cards that seem to be pushing it in the direction of like, hey, play a ton of combo things in a deck. I think that as I mentioned, the Rhyme Spinner does stand out as something which is like, this feels worth trying to enable as long as there's enough reasonable combo cards to play. It feels like there's a lot that you can do. As I mentioned, things like Ghostly Strike and Gone Fishing really allow you to enable a lot of these combo things fairly easily. And then between this and Beatboxer, just a very reasonable option for that style of deck, alongside in particular Record Scratcher, which can just give you these really explosive turns that you could potentially set up alongside the various bounce effects and things like bounce around that can really abuse your combo effects multiple times and really let you set up for pretty explosive turns. So it feels like Rogue has a lot of the same sort of stuff that it has historically of, hey, I'm going to, find powerful things and keep doing them over and over again and try and do them cheaper and cheaper every time I do. So certainly some scary stuff, but what would a Hearthstone format be without Rogue cheating mana all the time? All right, next up we have Shaman. Shaman has been one of the classes that has struggled a little bit recently since some of the nerfs and is losing some pretty powerful things. But let's take a look at Jive Insect. This is just an incredibly cool card. 5-cost legendary fire spell, transform a minion into Ragnaros the Fire Lord. I love it. This is certainly a super, super cool spell. Obviously you have to have a minion on the board, and then it's like, okay, now I spend 5, overload myself for 2, boom, Ragnaros. Ragnaros can be really scary in the early turns of the game, but Ragnaros isn't nearly as powerful as it was back in the heyday of Hearthstone, back when most decks were like, hey, I play a thing. Your turn. Okay, I play a thing. Your turn. Okay, I play another thing, right? This is like, something that, okay, your opponent plays this, and your board is full of a bunch of like Divine Shield minions or something. You're like, all right, ignore it. It's irrelevant, right? There's just lots of decks there's a lot more ways to deal with a Ragnaros and a lot more ways to avoid Ragnaros being something that just wins the game because of the nature of the kind of decks that exist in Hearthstone now. It's not just a matter of like, hey, stuff's more powerful. It's just there's more stuff that you can do that's different than play a minion each turn. And stuff's more powerful. But overall, I still love this. I think it's really cool. This is not in the pool of things that are undiscoverable, so you could theoretically try to just keep playing more and more Jive Insects and end up with a game of a dozen Ragnaroses. What is the plural of Ragnaros? Ragnarai? Ragnarosi? Whatever. Anyway, next up, we have Inza. 5-cost 5/5 with Battle Cry. For the rest of the game, your Overload cards cost 1 less. So this is, clearly a pretty powerful card. Anything that allows you to have ongoing mana reduction is an extremely powerful effect. Overload is something that we are seeing a bit more. Obviously, we saw Jive Insect with the Overload effect. The Overload quest is obviously gone. It went with the rest of the quests. Overall, I think it's just a pretty cool effect. There's no more Bran, and there's no more Macaw to get this like multiple triggers off of this or anything. So you can't get your Overload cards dramatically reduced. But this can make like your lightning bolts cost 0. You can have like pretty powerful tools alongside this. And there's other Overload synergy cards like this one. Jazz Base. Death Rattle, your next spell costs 1 less. Overload while equipped to improve. So you have lots of ways to have various cost reduction effects tied to Overload. They're also what is the Overload? Remove your Overload card. The 1-cost tradable, that one is returning the core set that removes all your Overloads. So there's a lot of various tools that enable you to be able to set things up with Overload. And this, for instance, being able to pair Jazz Base with, say, Criminal lineup, right? Because this is every time you Overload, it improves the cost reduction. Being able to play like something large alongside Criminal lineup in the same turn can be a very powerful way to generate a huge board state that can either overwhelm your opponent or just flat out kill them. It's a Melomania, 0-cost spell. Each time you play a minion this turn, add a random shaman spell to your hand. You all know that I love random stuff. I love stuff that makes games play out differently from game to game, because when you play Hearthstone for as many hours a day as I do, you really don't want the games to play out the same all the time. Maybe you do, but that would drive me crazy. So this as basically a way that you can like have a deck that is full of a bunch of cheap minions, and then it's like kaboom! I'm going to play a ton of minions. It'll give me a ton of random spells. It's basically a spell that gives you the Hagatha, the old Hagatha hero passive power for a turn. And there are a lot of like cheap elementals or murlocs or whatever that you can play alongside this that can give you a lot of value. So I think it's a neat card. I don't expect this to be a card that sees a ton of play because I would expect most of those decks to be things that want to, they're playing a ton of minions to want to mostly look to just kind of rush you down and not play something that's like, hey, I want some random stuff that end up giving me like removal or whatever. That doesn't seem super effective. But it's a cool card. Works very well with stuff like schooling that generates multiple minions from a single card. So maybe specifically because of that kind of interaction, this does end up seeing a little bit more play than otherwise would. Next up, we have Chill Vibes. Restore 8 health. Finale. Summon a 3/3 elemental with taunt. That would work a lot better if I weren't having this like scratchy throat thing. I can't really do the ASMR voice very well. But anyway, Chill Vibes. This card I think is very good. Just a 3-cost restore 8 health is already pretty good. And then alongside that, you have Finale, summon a 3/3 elemental with taunt. So say you're playing a controlling Shaman deck, and your opponent just attacks you for, 5 in the early turns of the game. And you're like, all right, I will heal myself back to full and make a 3/3 elemental. That's just a powerful effect, right? That's just a very, very powerful effect. And Shaman with a variety of stuff. We'll get to one of them. I guess here we'll just jump to it now. With Saxophone Soloist, we're all big fans of saxophone here in the Hearthstone world because the saxophone is an iconic musical sound that goes along with dramatic moments or pack opening. Epic Sax, 8 hours, run it. Is it 10 hours? I think it's 10 hours. But anyway, Saxophone Soloist gives you a both pretty effective way to just ensure that you're going to have stuff to do, but also a pretty reasonable way to help ensure you can trigger Finale for things like Chill Vibes, right? So this is, I think, just a very, very interesting card. It's Battlecry. If you control no other minions, add a Saxophone Soloist to your hand. So this could be a reasonable 1-drop for just a Murloc deck, for basically any deck. It's just like, hey, I'm going to play my guy. I'm going to play my guy. I'm going to play my guy. Oh, you killed it? I'm going to play my guy. You killed it? I'm going to play my guy. Killed it? I'm going to play my guy. So as long as you have like things to do with that minion and hopefully ways to kill your own totems, if you are kind of going in that direction, this just enables you to have effectively like, a way to just ensure that you are never without at least a 1/2. Next up, we have Flow Rider. It's a Battlecry 3/2 Naga. If you're overloaded, discover a spell from your deck. This is an interesting one because, if you're looking for like specific things, like say you're heavily overloaded, this can go find the Overdraft. Boom, blast your opponent for a bunch, unlock a bunch of your mana. This could potentially go find your Jive Insect. Give yourself a Ragnaros that you can set up. It is crucially, it's not discover a copy of a spell in your deck. It discovers the actual spell. So you don't get more copies of specific spells, but it does give you the ability to find those spells more often, which can be very effective. Next up, we have Altered Chord, a lifesteal 5 damage spell. Deal 5 damage to a minion, costs 3 less if you're overloaded. So another overload synergy effect. Effectively 2 cost 5 damage lifesteal is quite powerful, and obviously there's a lot of overload cards that can help enable it, and this is the sort of thing that as just more cards are printed, there will be more overload tools, and this again will cost a very reasonable amount to actually clear off an early game minion. And one of the things that a lot of control Shaman decks have struggled with historically is like just keeping themselves alive in a lot of these instances. And between this and Chill Vibes, I feel like there's a lot of powerful ways to keep yourself afloat. Next up, speaking of overload cards, Pack the House, 7 cost. Summon a random 6, 5, 4, and 3 cost minion. So obviously pretty expensive card. Does get you can curve right into this with the legendary Inza. Inza can curve you directly into Pack the House. He's clearly very popular trumpet player here that boom, and this is a lot of mana's worth of spells or of minions for a single card and for the amount of mana you're paying for it. So, I mean, you don't really necessarily get like great stuff. You know, like obviously a random minions of all these costs are not necessarily going to be fantastic, but it is a lot of power for that cost. And then speaking of just individual high power stuff, this guy's powerful. Remember Corpse Taker? Corpse Taker, you'd like build your deck to set up and you're like, okay, I hope I don't draw my like Rush or Divine Shield guy or my Wind Fury guy, so my Corpse Taker can be strong. This is just Corpse Taker. It doesn't have lifesteal, but this is just a Rush, Divine Shield, Taunt, Wind Fury, Elemental for 4. This is just a very, very strong card. You know, this can help kill your opponent. You can buff it up, smash them in the face. This can, clear 2 things on turn 4. And, if there are additional elemental synergy things, this has options there too. So, overall, Shaman feels it feels like it's some individual powerful cards, right? I think Brass Elemental, just a generically good card. I think that the Ragnaros Transform spell seems like a cool card. I'm not sure there's enough reasonable Overload stuff for the Overload package to be good yet, right? But I feel like there is certainly a lot in here that can potentially give you powerful tools for Overload when there is. I need to think about exactly what is in and out of the core set. I think there was actually like the buff to, I want to say, Feral Spirits. That's now only Overload 1 instead of Overload 2. So maybe there's some of the sort of Overload cards that haven't really been seeing play that were that I'm sort of mentally dismissing because they weren't good enough before, but maybe they are now. Maybe there is enough in order to actually make this deck work, but my inclination is that we're not quite there in terms of having enough quality Overload cards to make this synergy worth actually playing. But maybe I'm wrong. I hope I am, because Overload Shaman needs a chance to shine. Oh yeah, Ancestral Knowledge. Ancestral Knowledge is back. Ancestral Knowledge is back at only Overload 1. Maybe I'm a fool all along. Maybe Overload Shaman is the truth. I'm going to try it very soon.